Just gone 9 o'clock. Good to have you with us. This is eNCA live from Johannesburg. I'm Gareth Edwards. Joanne Joseph, my colleague, is away for today. This is our top story. You better fill up your tanks or dust off your bicycles is some good advice. The petrol price is set to go up by a staggering 39 cents a litre at midnight. Petrol will cost about R13.96 inland, just touching 14, and around R13.59 at the coast. It's the highest price that Africans have ever paid for fuel. The AA, or the Automobile Association, has warned if the rand continues to depreciate, motorists could end up forking out as much as 16 rand per litre at the pumps in the medium term. Well, as always seems to be the case, I'm the bearer of bad news, along with Senior Economist Chris Hart, who joins us. And every time you're in, Chris, we're talking about this petrol price. You think it's going to steady, and they hit you with another one.
No, exactly. I think we need to appreciate that it's basically a function of the weakness of the rand. Okay, and we're probably in for a fairly rough ride for the next few months. And I'll tell you why is that we've started off with tapering in the US. And you say, what the hell has that got to do with the price of eggs? But the point is, with the tapering, they've been printing money, they're trying to pull back. With that, the financial markets are shifting into what we call risk-off mode. And when risk-off, last year was risk-on. Okay, people were buying risky assets like equities, etc. The rand couldn't hold during that risk-on period, which is why we are so vulnerable. And that's because of the deficits. Now we shift to risk-off when they start to sell the assets, and those big deficits then start to count against us, and then we actually weaken even further. And so we're getting to a point where we probably will weaken a little bit more over the next few months until the US can't taper anymore. And we can see this with the pain in the financial markets. They'll probably stop their taper, certainly by mid-year. I think that'll be over. And then we'll start at least a recovery in the rand. But until then, we're going to go higher. And that 16 rand a litre petrol could well come by the middle of this year.
Well, you were just saying now, I'd like to pick up on what has it got to do with the price of eggs? Unfortunately, it has got a lot to do with the price of eggs, because petrol will increase all the costs across the board.
Well, let's say, even without the petrol price, the rand alone has a direct bearing on the food prices. And so what you'll find is just the weakness of the rand filters into fuel prices. You see that initially, and then also food prices and other imported goods. You'll find then even locally manufactured goods will start to go up at some stage because of any input or imported inputs will also push the cost of local production up. But then you also have the fuel price having a secondary effect, because everything needs to be transported in some way or another. Even agriculture, it's an input into agriculture, and so you have that second round effect as well.
Does anybody benefit from a weaker rand in South Africa?
Apparently exporters do, okay, but they don't really, because we're relying on a weaker currency and not genuine things that actually drive competitiveness like productivity. And so you find a weaker rand, a few months of you could say gain. All right, on the income side, their profits might look higher, but their capital base, which is also important, is weakened, because effectively the weak rand is a salary cut for everybody who earns money in rands, which of course we're feeling with the higher fuel price.
Has the petrol price, the weakness of the rand against the dollar and the other major currencies, got anything to do with the strike action we're seeing in South Africa at the moment?
Yes, because of the deficit. So you've got tapering, the deficit, you need to cover it. And so what's happening, we're importing goods and the demand's not really that high because the economy is weak, and then we're just not producing enough to actually cover those imports. So what governs the difference? Well, we see part of it is the weaker rand. The economic effect is to reduce demand for imported goods.
All right, so then there's the final question to you. Let me make sure I got this right. E-tolls are in place, the price of food is going up, the price of petrol is going up, and we have a platinum sector strike at the moment.
Yes.
Doom and gloom for 2014, or does Chris Hart see this changing for the consumer to the positive?
I do think, look, we're going to be in for a rough first half of the year at least. And then I do think that if I'm correct in the sense that we'll reach a crescendo and the rand weakens, to its worst level, or whatever it might be in the first half, and then we start a recovery process beyond that, then we will start to see the improvements coming through. And so so will the growth will be subdued in the first half as well, and then we might battle to get 2% growth again this year, and then next year you'll start to see things pick up again. And if we adopt reasonably sensible economic policies, which is the National Development Plan, and hopefully after the election the populism can actually subside and we actually get to the real thing, you'll find the investor confidence will return, and we will actually, we could potentially then have a pretty good next few years, but we will need that pragmatism coming through.
All right, we'll have to hang on tight for the moment. As always, Senior Economist Chris Hart giving us his advice. So if some advice is to tighten the belts and buckle down, it's going to be a rough few months with the petrol price going up at midnight tonight as well. Well, I mentioned the mines. Let's go to that now, where talks between mining union UMCU and platinum producers are expected to resume this morning. UMCU members have been on strike for more than a week now. The industrial action has affected operations at Amplats, Implats and Lonmin. Last week, you'll remember, UMCU rejected proposed wage increases of at least 7% for each of the next 3 years. The union is actually demanding a monthly basic salary of 12.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com